Hello, my name is AJ Goldsby. I'm a life master from Pensacola, Florida, and I'm coming to you today to bring you the second game of the Carlsen-Anand World Championship match. In this game, Carlsen was white, and he scored an amazing win. And of course, all the critics are already talking about a blowout and everything else, all that kind of nonsense. Of course, I don't really buy that. But anyway, let's go ahead and just jump right into the game. This was game 2 of the World Championship match between Anand and Carlsen. Carlsen is white, and Viswanathan Anand is black. It's been playing in Sochi, Russia, and this game was played on the 9th of November. Anyway, starts off e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, knight f6, d3. d3 is a rather passive move. The reason they play that move is because they don't want to get into the main line. If you want to get into the main line, you're just going to have to find any database. I'm not going to pull up the moves here, but if you find any database, well, probably I could just very quickly. Going back a move here. If we don't play d3, if we just play the normal castles, I believe that we can just punch this in, follow the main line. Knight takes e4, d4, knight d6, bishop takes c6, d takes c6, d takes e5, knight f5, queen takes d8 check, king takes d8, knight c3, etc. And if you want to see a match where this variation was featured a lot, Kramnik played it against Kasparov, I believe, in their World Championship match showdown in 2000. And as I remember, Kasparov was never able to punch through Kramnik's defenses and actually win from the white side of that line. So that's the main reason. Going back here, we're just going to review the opening. The opening we just looked at, e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5. Of course, this is a Lopez. Of course, this is the Berlin defense. White plays d3 in order to maintain his center pawn. And as I just showed you, the line with castles, knight takes e4, d4, knight f6, knight, bishop takes, d takes e5, knight f5, queen takes d8, king takes d8. Now you can play rook d1, check, or knight c3. Either one of those moves are approved by theory. This is one of the main lines of the Berlin defense, and many players have played both white and black. You can check out the theory of that. But the standard accepted theology is that it's very hard for white to break through against black's defense. His defense is just too solid. Garry Kasparov, one of the greatest players of all time, was unable to beat Kramnik from these positions in their World Championship match. And so I think more and more we're seeing a shift away from these type of positions to other positions. And so that's why I think the players chose the line that they did. But anyway, just going back to the actual game, e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, knight f6. White plays d3 in order to maintain his center pawn and avoid the aforementioned line, where the things open up and basically, with the queens get traded. For a long time, of course, that was thought to be a very good line for white, but again, Kramnik and other players have shown that black can hold that position pretty easily. And now black plays bishop c5, and this is usually the point of black's play, is black can get a very active position that he normally doesn't get in the Spanish variation, and white simply castles. And all these moves have been played dozens of times before. In fact, right before I did this video, I did a quick search and searched the online database, and some of the games that I found that were featured after white castled on move 5. Again, it was with 5 castling kingside. Some of the games I found in the database, some of the recent games, were Adams Ponomaryov, the 42nd Dortmund, I believe that was a draw. That was this year, 2014. Efamenko Frezene, that was the 30th European Cup. That was just this September of this year, 2014. Topolov Andreakin, that was the 2014 Fight Candidates match. And then going back to some older games, Panov Tolush, T-O-L-U-S-H, the URS Championship in 1939, and even further back was Newman Anderson. A match game was played in 1864. And this position is very well known to theory. It's been seen, as I've shown, many times. Theory regards it as equal. Some theorists tend to prefer black because he gets active play and his bishop, his dark squared bishop is really active. But I think the engines will show that the position is completely equal right now, and there's literally hundreds, if not thousands, of games with this position as white. Black plays d6, and now white plays rook e1. And the commentator online, commented that white has tried virtually everything here. I think normally c3 or knight bd2 is usually played first. Normally rook e1 is not played. And when I searched the online database, I only found a handful of games, and none of those were significant master level games. They were games like, the under 12 championship, those kind of things, or much lower rated players. None of them were, grandmaster chess. So already we're pretty much out of book at move 6. So I think that is what Carlsen wanted, and he's just trying to avoid a theoretical fight. And apparently also I think he's respectful enough of Anand. Anand's known as a great candidate. He's obviously was world champion for many years. In fact, one of the facts I heard about Anand was he was the only world championship candidate who won his world championship under every format possible. He won it in a match. He won it in a shootout. He won it in a all the different formats that they've had. Various formats. There's 4 or 5 different formats that have been played for the World Championship, and Anand has managed to triumph in every one of those. So he's the only candidate to ever do that. So I thought that was an interesting factoid to throw out there. But anyway, now we have rook e1, and basically it's just a nice solid position for white. I don't think either side is better. In fact, the engines show it as dead equal. There would have been a time I might have thought black was slightly better simply because of his more active dark squared bishop on c5. But other than that, I think the position is fully playable for both sides. Black castles. White plays bishop takes c6. It's very obvious that Carlsen is interested. Now, Carlsen is white and Anand is black. So I think Carlsen is looking to avoid any preparation and also to destroy Anand's structure. He did a lot of that in their last World Championship match. He would get a better game, put pressure on Anand, and have the better structure, and have very long games where he would just grind Anand down. And that strategy was very successful in their first World Championship match. And I did videos on all of those games, and you can go back and look at those if you like. But anyway, bishop takes c6, b takes c6. White plays h3. This is a very useful move. Normally you hear people say, well, the play is in the center and don't play on the wings, and it's a waste of time to push your h-pawn or a-pawn or whatever. Don't play on the wings. The game is not there. But I think here its strategy is more important. And also this is a very useful move because it stops bishop g4, knight g4, putting more pressure on f2 square, etc. And white's it's very obvious that white's not going for any advantage at all. He's basically looking just to set up a playable game and see what happens. Black plays rook e8. White plays knight bd2. We're basically not. We're totally out of book at this point. At this point, I'm pretty sure that both players have been already thrown on their own resources. We pretty much got out of the main line book, out of my videos, and I researched all my videos and all the opening books, and I really can't find any position even remotely like this one in any of my books or DVDs. So we're pretty much out of opening theory. Knight d7, knight c4, bishop b6, a4. Of course, now the threat is possibly to play b4 and a5 and just trap black's dark squared bishop. He obviously wants to avoid that, so he plays a5. And now Carlsen plays knight takes bishop. That's a very annoying bishop. He decides to go ahead and eliminate that piece because it's just simply pointed right at his king. So bishop takes, pawn takes, and now d4. I think now you could probably say, under the engines assess this, Houdini and Fritz are the two main engines I used. I've analyzed this game several times with both Houdini and Fritz. But they're basically considered two of the best engines possible out there on the market today. And Rivka, I use Rivka a lot too, Rivka 4. But anyway, Houdini and Fritz obsess this position as being totally dead equal, and I think that's pretty much correct. Classical players might say, well, white's just a tad better because he has a little bit better presence in the center and he's got a little more space. So, you decide, you take a look at the position. If you go by the engines, it's dead equal. If you're going by classical assessment of chess, then you could say white is just a tad better here. But it's certainly not, it's not anything decisive at this point. Black plays queen c7, and now we have a very interesting position. The players have only played 13 moves, and now Carlsen plays rook a3. Very nice, interesting move, creative rook luff. The idea is to swing the rook over to g3 and get a kingside attack Very nice idea, very creative idea, very typical of Carlsen, too. I think he's always looking for these strange and unusual ideas that will, unbalance the position and cause problems for his opponent. Anand plays knight f8. This knight on d7 wasn't doing that much, and it's blocking in the light squared bishop. So this knight comes over here to defend h7, and it also can redeploy to e6. Black can possibly, if white exchanges on e5, black can play moves like knight e6 and have an outpost on f4 or d4. Those kind of ideas. Anyway, it's just a simple redeploy move. D takes e5, D takes e5, knight h4. Now white's going for the outpost here on f5. And if you go through my list of things that I try to look for, things I consider to be the 4 basic principles of the middle game, they are attack the king, look for play. Play are, open lines for your pieces, files, diagonals, whatnot. And then, and one of the very first things you look for is an outpost. Okay, so basically knight goes for the outpost. Then you make an attack weaknesses. And finally, the final phase of middle game principles is always be on the lookout for a favorable transition to a good end game. So I think those are 4 ideas that might help some players out there, help you generate your various, ideas and give you candidate moves, because Kotov said in any position in the middle game you should have 3 good candidate moves, and after selecting those 3 candidate moves, then you try to analyze the position and determine which one of the moves that you've selected based on those criteria are going to be your best, and that's where analysis kicks in. But anyway, that's basically the Kotov. He's one of the greatest players of all time, and he wrote the book Think Like a Grandmaster, books like that, and he's a great Russian teacher, a very respected teacher. And, I think his ideas are rock solid. In other words, if you're really going to try to step up to the next level, you should always, in any position, especially in complicated middle game positions, try to have at least 3 candidate moves and then go from there. I just thought I would throw that in. White plays knight h4 on move 16. Again, the idea is trying to get the knight to f5. Black plays rook d8. The annotator for the ChessBase, Grandmaster Alejandro Ramirez Alvarez, gave that a dubious. I think that's a little too early because Fritz still assesses the position as absolutely dead equal, and he recommends instead that black played f6 right now. I don't really necessarily buy that. Certainly the rook on an open file gaining a tempo has got to be right. The last thing that Carlsen was going to do in this position was to play rook d3 and exchange off his good rook. So, white's got to move his queen. So queen h5. The queen looks dangerous on h5, but it's really absolutely nothing. Now, the best move for black is now simply playing knight g6, but Anand goes ahead and plays f6. White plays knight f5, and now Anand plays bishop e6. According to all the engines, the position is still dead equal. However, once again, our annotator for the ChessBase online, who annotated this game online, he gives bishop e6 a whole question mark. I think that's a little bit overreaction, a little bit reactionary chess. It's certainly not based on the assessment of the engines. Again, the engines still assess the positions as dead equal. So I don't think bishop e6 is that bad. Just some of the other ideas there are simply king h8 or an immediate bishop takes f5. Grandmaster Ramirez Alvarez, he recommends queen f7, which was also a very playable idea. Just playing the black queen f7 to try to trade off the trade off the queens there. And that would certainly take all the sting, or most of the sting, out of white's attack. So bishop e6, but it certainly wasn't a bad move. Rook g3, and I'm running Deep Fritz 14 in the background, and I'm keeping my eye on that, because to me the engine's going to tell us when the first bad moves play. And now black plays knight g6. I do agree with, in fact, it's the first suggestion of Houdini. Did several analysis passes with Houdini sliding and whatnot, but Houdini was the first to pop up, almost immediately, within just 2 or 3 minutes. The idea of rook d7 here in this position, as soon as this game was over, I began looking at it. But anyway, rook d7 is a very strong move, and Grandmaster Ramirez Alvarez, he points that out too. So anyway, rook d7 was a good move, but knight g6 is also playable. Again, the engines are still holding dead even at dead equal at this point. White plays h4. That's just an attacking move. It's the whole idea of 20 h4 is that white's putting a lot of pressure on the black position. Bishop h6 was also very interesting, If you're interested in the analysis of that move, I suggest you go to the ChessBase website and download Grandmaster Ramirez Alvarez's analysis of this game. But anyway, now black plays bishop takes, black Anand. Anand is playing black. He plays bishop takes f5. And that's got to be the first move. You know, almost instantly, both Houdini and Fritz see quite a bit of change in their evaluations of the position. And White's position gains at least half a pawn in both Houdini and Fritz's estimation, and a significant amount anyway. So, and it sees an immediate change. So I think that's got to be the first move we really have to criticize. Again, simply rook d7 was a very strong move. Simply rook d7 and putting the other rook. If black plays rook d7 and plays his queen rook to d8, all of his pieces are on very solid squares. All the key squares are heavily guarded. I really don't see white breaking through. And one of the ideas here, the sacrificial idea that Anand has to be concerned about is knight takes g7 and then possibly the queen moving in h5, things of that nature. So I think that he has to be extremely careful about that kind of stuff. So simply by playing rook d7 and r d8, black basically sets up a fortress. That had to be the correct idea. So bishop takes f5, even though Grandmaster Ramirez Alvarez on the ChessBase website did not criticize that, I think that's got to be a bad move. And I think Andy Soltis said it best. I forget which book he said that, but I'm a big fan of Andrew Soltis and his writings. And I remember one time he said that anytime any player changes the pawn structure, they have to be very, very careful that when you change the pawn structure, you're either changing it, he said most of the time, very rarely do you change the pawn structure, does it not change for the better or the worse. In other words, one player is usually adversely affected by a change in the pawn structure. That's almost always true. Sometimes you have an exchange and things still stay relatively equal, but I don't think that's the case. As soon as that pawn arrives on f5, I think black has problems. Now black plays knight f4, and that was another move that I thought he maybe should not have played, maybe he should have avoided. Simply knight f8 might have been a little bit less dangerous there, you know, because white does have an attack. He's still got a pawn storm, ideas of like maybe queen g4, h4, h5, h6, you know, that kind of stuff. All different kind of ideas there for white, but nonetheless, knight f4 just seems to be more problems for black. He's going to have that pawn sticking out like a sore thumb on the f4 square. And now, right now the Deep Fritz is seeing white having, you know, 59/100ths of a pawn advantage. So white's advantage is slowly starting to build. Bishop takes f4. Let me just scroll down here a little bit. I want to make sure I can see the analysis and some of the comments that I've written and Grandmaster Alvarez has written. E takes f4. Oh, and now Carlsen's going to play his 23rd move. It's time for Carlsen to play his 23rd move, and I really like this next move. In fact, I give this move a double exclam. White plays 24, rook c3. The reason I give that an exclam is, number one, you know, just a normal run-of-the-mill master like myself, I would have thought the correct idea here was play rook g4 and put pressure on this pawn and put pressure on the king's side. But Carlsen is very flexible. He simply comes back, bang, hits the c-pawn here. He leaves this pawn here, and he leaves his rook, you know, dominating the center here. He's going to have the e6 square. You know, his rook's going to have an e6 square. There's threats of rook e6 and just rook takes, you know, this other rook coming to e6 and then either rook taking the pawn. So black's got to be very, very careful here. He can't contest the e-file with rook e8 with the queen on h5. And he can't play moves like queen f7 in this position because of rook takes c6. I think rook to c3 was a very nice move, and it shows just how open-minded and how flexible Carlsen is. I believe it's one of the trademarks of his style. And I was really impressed with that move because it was not the move that I was expecting in that position. Anyway, black plays c5, and now white plays rook e6. And right now the engines only give white, you know, around, it depends on if you're using Houdini and Fritz, but anywhere from 20 to 30 to 41/100ths of a pawn, depending on which engine you're using. But that's not so much important. The game isn't played by engines. First of all, that's the first thing you have to learn if you want to get better. And the second thing is white has real pressure. The person with any problems here has got to be black. Anand has a very difficult position, and trying to defend black's position is going to become increasingly harder and harder. And if you watch this game, and I watched the video online and watched the game online some, Anand slowly chipping away at his time. His time, he's burning up more and more time trying to find good moves here. So basically, if I've already pointed out some of the improvements, and Grandmaster Ramirez Alvarez also pointed out several places where Black could have improved and didn't. So definitely, Anand has drifted into a very passive position, and this game reminds us all too much of the last match. We saw a lot of this in the last match. Anand would drift into a position where either an in-game or a middle-game position where he had almost no play, and Carlsen had all the play and was putting pressure on, Anand for 10, 20, 30 moves, and Anand would eventually crack under the pressure. And that's what I was afraid we were going to see more of the same. And to see this in the very second game of the match was a little discouraging for Anand fans. I'm a fan of both players, but I would have to say in this match I'm rooting for Anand because, Anand, too many people, in my opinion, have already, cashed Anand out. They've said that it's time for Vishy to throw in the towel, that he's old, washed up, that he can't play anymore, yada, 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 et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I just don't think that those things are true. I think that Anand is still a great player. He proved that he's still one of the world's powerhouses by coming back and convincingly winning the candidates tournament earlier this year. And so, I really don't think that, Anand's all washed up. And so I'm really kind of rooting for Anand this time around, maybe to take the title back, because he's certainly a much better player than he showed in the last match with Carlsen. But anyway, rook e6, and, now he plays RAB8. Rook c4, another nice move. Now the threat is just simply queen g4 and rook takes pawn. White's just going to win pick off a pawn, be a pawn up. So, Black's trying to defend, but it's not so easy to do. Queen d7. Now there's the threat of queen here check, queen to d1 check, and then, swap the queens because White's queen is hanging. So king h2 exclam. They didn't give that an exclam online, but for beginners, there's a very important principle. I was playing chess for a lot of years before anyone enlightened me or brought this principle to my attention, but there's an idea or concept in master level chess, and I had been playing for a long time before I even heard this idea, and it really didn't sink in on me. But anyway, I was playing in South Florida one time, and I don't remember the gentleman's name, but I remember he was an older FIDE master. He's passed away now. And we were analyzing the game, and he told me after the game, he said, AJ, the idea is when you have a player bound up or you have him tied up, keep him tied up, don't exchange pieces. That any exchange of pieces is simply going to relieve the pressure. A lot of players today, thanks to video and internet, know that idea today, but it's a principle that I didn't learn I was playing chess for a lot of years, at least 10 or 15 years, before I was even exposed to that idea. So that's the idea here, this idea of 26 king h2. It's White has a lot of pressure on Black's position, but if he allows the exchange of queens, a lot of the pressure is going to go away. So basically, White's got to take a tempo and move his king out of the way in order to maintain the pressure and keep the pieces on and keep Black tied up. So I just thought I would point that out to players, because hopefully all the players that are watching this video are not higher level players. Or hopefully the average player watching this video will fall in the median line. He'll be somewhere 1600 or less. So anyway, I just wanted to point that out in case there are players of a lower rating out there watching this video and they have never heard this idea before. It's something that you have to learn if you're trying to get better. Anyway, king h2 exclam. Black plays rook f8. That might not have been such a great move there. I don't know if too many commentators pointed this out yet, but maybe the time for Black to try to exchange pieces was to try to play rook e8. Maybe that was what he should have played, but he didn't do that. There's a nice little trap here that if Black plays queen d1, then White simply goes, rook down here check. That you have that problem. So that's a nice little trap. Obviously, he's not going to fall for that. But anyway, after 26 king h2 exclam, Anand plays rook f8. He should have tried rook e8 there. He's drifting into a very passive position where he has almost no play, and in my opinion those kind of positions are always bad. RCE4. Now White's totally dominating the e-file. Any chance to exchange pieces on the e-file has gone by the wayside, and now Deep Fritz is showing a plus over a line. It's showing White having an advantage of almost 1.5 points, and I think that's logical too. This pawn on f4, if White wants it, he can just play king h3, king g4, king takes f4, or queen g4 and queen takes f4 and pick off this pawn. And Black can't exchange pieces on the e-file because White has the that square sewn up. So rook b7, queen e2. Now white's again tripling on e file, maintaining the pressure. And black plays b5. I'm not sure who did this. Someone sent me analysis. I saw so many people. I got a lot of friends in chess, and a lot of people send me stuff, and so many people send me stuff. Sometimes I'm a little bit drowned or a little bit overwhelmed by the amount of material that comes in. But someone has sent me an analysis and said that this was criticized. I think it was the ICC annotator, and he gave that a question mark. But I don't know exactly who that was. I may be mistaken. It may not have been him, that particular person. But anyway, someone criticized this and gave it a question mark. Kind of curious at this point because that's the first choice of Deep Fritz 14. I mean, the point is that black is very, very bound up and has almost no counterplay. White's has a lot of pressure in. Anyway, b5. And now there's several ideas here for white. Deep Fritz likes f3. Some programs like rook e7. But Anand just simply plays, not Anand, rather, Carlsen again is white. I apologize. Carlsen is white. He just plays b3. The immediate rook e7 there was certainly worth attention. But b3 is a nice solid move, just maintaining the pressure. B takes a4, B takes a4. Black hasn't really gained anything, he has gained a little bit. He's got an open file for his rook, and these pawns are split up, but I don't think really he's gained that much. And it's still a tough position for black. Rook b4, and Anand's doing the very best that he can, but he's going to be under pressure. He's been under pressure ever since the opening, really since the end of the opening phase. So he's basically been on pressure this entire game. Rook b4, trying to exchange off a set of rooks, threatening maybe rook takes rook. White goes rook e7, queen d6. Now there's the idea of maybe f3 check, winning the white queen. So at least there's one tactic in this position. Anand's trying to create counterplay. Queen f3, the queen just keeps now the threat is just simply maybe queen takes f4, or even moving the rook away and doubling on the 7th rank. But there's all kinds of ideas here for white. Another idea here that one player said, he thought the white could play king h3, king g4 and just win this pawn here, and I guess that's a playable idea. In fact, that shows you just how bad black's position is, that if white could do something like that, then black's very tied up, and I think that's a problem for black. But anyway, queen f3 exclam, rook takes e4, queen takes e4, f3 check, g3. And, now I think Anand was down to about 1 minute. The game should not be over here, not by a long shot. The correct move here was queen d2. If he'd have played queen d2, I think I did not come up with this line. This line is attributed to Grandmaster Alejandro Ramirez Alvarez, but he came up with queen d2, queen takes f3, queen takes c2, king g2, and it says black's close to loss, but he's not quite there yet, and I have to agree with that. It's plus over a line, very close to plus minus, but it's not 100% yet an easy win there. And there's some other ideas there after queen d2. Queen takes f3, queen takes c2. Well, I could go on to analysis and look at a bunch of very complicated ideas, but I think that kind of defeats the thing. I think king g2 is probably the simplest idea, simply to guard the f2 square. Now the queen's free to be a ranger, run down here and maybe double on the 7th rank, those kind of ideas. But anyway, in this particular position, after f3 check, and then Carlsen played g3, Anand was short of time. He has obviously been defending for a long, long time, and he blunders. And now, obviously, people criticize, world champion or world champion candidate when they blunder. But I think Nigel Short pointed out blunders don't happen in a vacuum. H5 came after only enormous sustained pressure. In other words, Anand blunders here. He plays H5, and after queen b7, Anand had to resign. White wins. Carlsen wins the game. And again, a lot of people are criticizing Anand, saying, well, why did Anand blunder? But I think, like Short pointed out, blunders don't happen all by themselves. There is a cause and effect. Anand was short of time. He'd been defending almost constantly since about move 10. And so, he's been thrown on his own resources. Anytime you're short of time and anytime you've been defending for a long time, in my experience, it's very easy to make a mistake in those types of situations. Obviously, we're disappointed when a player of Anand's caliber makes a blunder of that kind, plays a terrible move like h5, which is really like a double question mark. I mean, we go from a plus over a line where white has anywhere between 1 and 1.5 points advantage according to the engine, and then after h5 it's 10 or 15 points. So I mean, it's obviously a huge blunder for Anand, but again, the reason being, and of course queen b7 and Anand resign. And I think again you have to attribute, there's an old Chinese proverb, a very famous story where a man's found dead at the base of the mountain, and an entire bunch of villagers, they want to basically hang this one guy. He's a guy that lives on top of the mountain, and and then they go to the local wise man, and they ask the local wise man, what's up, or what should we do? And the wise man said, he looks at the whole situation, and he looks everything over and lets everybody calm down. Once he gets a little quiet, he asks the question. He says, the first thing we have to ascertain was, did he fall or was he pushed? And I think, to me, that's axiomatic. That's a very illustrative point. And again, the point being in this game, I think it was more of a fact that Anand was pushed. He was defending and beat up, and he's kind of like a prize fighter that's been in a heavyweight boxing match, and he's gone through 15 rounds of severe punishment before he finally makes a mistake and leaves his guard down and gets clocked. I think that's a good analogy. But anyway, thank you for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed my video of this game. Maybe I didn't explore things as deeply as you would have liked. But I have to keep in mind the time factors, and that also too the average player out there probably isn't interested in really deep analysis. Hopefully I did a good enough job to where at least the average player is entertained, and I covered all points too. I did quite a bit of analysis beforehand with several engines preparing to do this video, so I wasn't just flying off the from the seat of my pants and just shooting in the dark. Basically, I had some good information to give to you. Well, anyway, thank you for watching my video. I hope if you like my videos and you like my web pages, you'll go to my go to the PayPal website, www.paypal.com, and make a contribution under my email address, which is lifemasteraj@yahoo.com. Thank you for watching my video, and have a great day.